saying that we find ourselves in a situation where our government is looking for further help from the, well, maybe it's the reconstruction fund, because I believe there's where the money would be coming from. But once they have used money for liquidity support, it simply means that it has to be considered a loan and it has to be paid back. But what we see here happening, the Dutch is saying that they're willing to help St. Martin, but not unless the MPs take a cut in their salaries. Well, that seems to be a condition that is attached to whether or not they would help. And that kind of brings us right back to where it was after the hurricane. And I just want to ask Mr. Marlin to just address the issue of, is this a deja vu all over again? Good morning, sir. Good afternoon, rather.
Good afternoon, Wendell. Good afternoon, radio listeners and those viewing on television as well. As always, it's a pleasure to be here. Wendell, for some time after the hurricane, with the change of government, rather, I had taken a step back after the election. Not taken a step back, but like I've said once on a program, sometimes one needs to be silent in order to be heard. You hear the old people say, the silence is deafening. When you talk, it sometimes get lost in translation. It's like, oh, he again. So you stay quiet. Let it all play out. And today we see that what I've been trying to fight off the Dutch about, while I was saying it's an indecent proposal, no, it is unacceptable, guys, we can't go down that route, we had others who just were hungry to get in power, using the condition of the airport, the condition of the hurricane, the aftermath of the hurricane, to mislead the people and say Marlin and his government blocking aid. And we heard statements like, just tell us what we got to do and we're going to sign it because we want the aid. Wendell, it is indeed sort of deja vu. The Dutch government continues to move the goalpost. It was not a clear-cut, if you want to call it, agreement. Listen, this is it, and these are the conditions. No. And like my position from the beginning was, the conditions for financial support, we have no problem with them if you tell us you can't, we are not going to give you money to spend on race cars or to spend on going to the beach. We are going to give you money to rebuild homes. We are going to give you money to help those who have lost their jobs. We're going to help you put money into rebuilding the economy. But what we see is, before they can agree to dispensing anything, it was like St. Martin has to live up to several conditions. One, the integrity chamber, the way they wanted it, and we had been fighting it off, has to come, their style, reporting to them. They wanted control of immigration. They wanted control of border control. Those MPs that wanted to get in power agree. They agreed to things that they had not even read the fine print of. And a year and a half after, rather than we seeing all the roofs have been fixed and the schools have been fixed and the library has been rebuilt and the airport is moving, what we see every time that you reach at another juncture, every time there is a need for a drawdown, so to speak, there are new conditions, and there are new conditions. You started out by pointing out that MP salaries must be cut. That is not the reason why I am here. That is not the reason why I'm saying, hey, St. Martin, we got to fight because they want to touch our salaries. I am saying it is wrong, fundamentally wrong, for the Dutch to continue to blackmail St. Martin, because we have evolved in the colonial structure that we were in. We didn't ask to be colonized, just like all the other countries in the Caribbean and all the other colonies all over the world. We didn't ask for it. It is something wrong that the European countries did 300 and 400 years ago. They set out conquering other countries, and not that because you and I have a fight and we fight over something. They set out so-called to discover the new world, but rather than, okay, if you discover people living peacefully in their country, you try to maybe trade with them, you visit them as a tourist, you invite them back to your country, but you don't find out that a couple of streets lower down in your neighborhood or higher up the hill in South Reward, there are people living, and you go and invade their home, invade their sanctity, take what is theirs, take possession of their house, their car, and then make the man, his wife, and his children work for you for free under ridiculous circumstances, beating them if they don't work hard enough, don't feed them adequately. Most of them die out young. And then you call that taking care of people or loving people, and then 300 years after you still can't let go, and you are coming back now with modern tactics to kind of fool the rest of the world, because we know that there is an ongoing process in the United Nations for the decolonization, and by a certain time the United Nations is saying, hey, people should no longer have colonies, okay? You should no longer have colonies, countries should be free, but the countries are free to enter a relationship or maintain a relationship with you. But you can never enforce your will upon another nation. Now, the Netherlands Antilles has been through their era of colonialism. Some 70 years ago, we became the Netherlands Antilles after being Curacao and its dependencies. We became the Netherlands Antilles, and then Aruba left, and then St. Martin started flexing their muscles. We want to leave too, and eventually it took almost like 10 years rather since the vote in the referendum that Curacao also was forced to have another referendum in which the people said, we too want out. Now that resulted in the kingdom being rearranged with us having 4 countries. Our constitution, our kingdom charter clearly speaks of 4 countries in the kingdom. We go, and it might sound like a broken record. It might sound like, oh, there he go again speaking about that same thing. But it is that ugly thread that keeps coming back every time in our, if you want to call it, dealing with the Dutch government. They don't want to let go, and worse yet, it looks like they are reinventing modern colonial structures to get the former Netherlands Antilles back on their knees before they did it, because it was okay then, generally accepted throughout Europe, that the European countries were just roaming the globe, conquering, capturing, claiming one island after the other as theirs, and then they moved into Latin America as well, cleaning out their gold and all their minerals, all their richness, and shipping it back home. And there were the battles on the ocean and the Caribbean seas, this one fighting that one for his silver fleet and his gold, and we know about the pirates of the Caribbean and things like that. We were taught to sort of glorify them. They were the good guys, the pirates, and everybody wanted to be a pirate, and everybody wanted to have that patch over his eye and that sword and that parrot on his shoulder. That made you like the macho man of those days. But it was not put in the right perspective as to what really was taking place. They were raping South America. They were raping the Caribbean of whatever riches we had, whether it was gold, whether it was silver, whether it was bauxite, whether it was salt, or whatever it is that could have made them rich. And they became the wealthy nations of the face of the earth, particularly in the Western world. And we were the poor countries on our knees, struggling to crawl, not even to walk. And when you go through that decolonization process, and thank God some of our Caribbean brothers and sisters have become independent, but we held on to restructuring the Netherlands Antilles until we decided, no, let's break it up and become autonomous countries. And I've always said a pit stop towards independence. But rather than us embarking on a journey that maybe the next generation would hoist that flag of independence, we see a systematic return to the colonial days, not in the same identical structures or governmental structures, but on paper and for the rest of the world, and in particularly towards the United Nations. We are equal countries in the kingdom. We have our own constitution. We have our own parliament. We have. But at the end of the day, there is one country in this kingdom, the Netherlands, that is now, wielding that big stick. And in particular, St. Martin was easier to be brought to her knees because a hurricane hit. Dominica, right next door, was hit by a hurricane a week after us. Hundreds of millions was given by the same Dutch government. By the same Dutch, the same taxpayers' money went to Dominica. Dominica didn't have to live up to one condition. Not one condition. But we are being criminalized. We are being made out to be the scumbags of the Caribbean. And we have to give up everything, from management of the airport, that before that we were doing a great job. I personally headed a delegation when we went to the State Department in Washington to finalize or to continue the negotiations for St. Martin to have pre-clearance. And where is that? We would have been pushed again to the front lines of developments in the Caribbean. It means so much to the traveler if he can clear his flight, let's say, in the Caribbean, so when he reaches, whether it's New York, whether it's Miami, Atlanta, Boston, or wherever we fly directly to, that they have already cleared customs and immigration, and they can make their connection for their next flight. Because if you're going to Chicago and you fly into Miami, and you got to clear immigration and customs and pick up luggage and all of this and check it in again, it takes so much longer than if you do it here. On top of that, all of those private jets who, because they have to clear immigration and customs, have to fly in to an airport that provides that service, you can now leave St. Martin and basically fly straight to your private airstrip in the back of your yard, so to speak, because you have already cleared immigration and customs in St. Martin. That is a major thing for us. It may not be for Holland because they don't want it at Schiphol, but if you don't want it, that's your right not to want it. But St. Martin not only wants it, St. Martin needs it. It is important to push us ahead of the pack again. But what do we see? The government is forced to push it off. And do you really think America is going to sit down twiddling their thumbs? Okay, let's see when St. Martin is going to make up its mind. Let's hold off on it. No, America is going to look elsewhere in the Caribbean. And as we speak right now, I'm sure Dominica, St. Kitts or Antigua, Barbados, one of them, if not all of them, lobbying hard to get what we had on a golden platter and allow the Dutch to tell us, No, 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 no. That's not no priority. It's no priority for you, the Dutch. But it is a priority for St. Martin. The Dutch does not want a politician who speaks back, a politician who pushes back, a politician who says, no, it is not yours. It is not your authority. It's not your call to make. You shouldn't be interfering here, there, or elsewhere. But now you have a group of people responsible for governing this country, and they are supported by a number of members in parliament who are also now like, we don't know what to do. Okay? We fought for it, we have it, but we don't really have it. They're ashamed to come out and admit that they are on the wrong track. And Wendell, it's about time the people of St. Martin at least open their eyes and realize this government is leading St. Martin down a path of destruction. And before you know it, if we continue for another year in this direction, the Dutch will be crawling all over us, and we will be back to the colonial days that we ourselves in our lifetime didn't experience like we would be experiencing it now.
But isn't it true, though, that we are in a position right now needing funds in our treasury so that they can function, and as a result, those who are leading the country has no choice but to give in?
Wendell, that has started after the hurricane, when that group of 8 came and say, just tell us what you want. Whatever you want, take it. And whatever we got to do, we will sign. Whatever you want us to do. When you behave that way, then they will continue to move the goalpost. They will continue to move the goalpost, and they're not giving anything without asking for much more in return. And like I just said, what did Dominica have to give them? Probably they're paying Dominica off for a vote in the UN for that seat on the UN Security Council. But that is not the way you treat what is supposed to then be family. If we are one family in the Dutch kingdom, we are hampered. Dominica has gotten millions from the international community because it's an independent country, a small independent country that was hit by a hurricane. We were hit by the most devastating hurricane in history to make landfall anywhere in the Atlantic Basin. This is a historic one. This isn't Donna, this isn't Hugo, this isn't Luis, this isn't Marilyn. This is Irma. This will go down unless one of these days surpass, but this is the mother of all hurricanes that hit us. And what a shame that our biggest country in this, if you want to call it Dutch Federation of 4 countries, is putting one condition after the other, one condition after the other. It's like taking away your manhood from you. And that is why I equated back then with the movie, The Indecent Proposal, okay? Where, yes, the young couple lost all they had in the casino, and then Robert Redford, who starred in that movie, walks up to them and makes that proposal. I can help you with $1 million. And of course, losing everything, and then a stranger offers $1 million, but then in exchange for what? He didn't tell them, make sure you don't gamble again. He didn't say, make sure you don't go to a casino, or make sure you invest it, or make sure you pay off your bills, or make sure you go and buy a house. There was one condition to it. I want to sleep with your wife for one night. I want to spend one night with your wife. That was low down, nasty, indecent. And rather than saying, hey, one of our brothers and sisters were hit, when Holland had suffered from the big disaster, the flood back then, yes, the Netherlands Antilles, we didn't have hundreds of millions to send, but we collected what we could have afforded. We brought money together, and it was sent to Europe, sent to Holland to help our brothers and sisters in the kingdom. And there was no condition attached to it, none whatsoever. And you see, our people have been brainwashed over the years to believe that, yes, we need Holland to tell us what to do. Yes, Holland is right when they tell us. Yes, and then when you tie it, because what do? You have to label the leaders of this country. A similar pattern like with South Africa. You need to label the leaders of the country as corrupt, as unable, as unqualified. When I hear the director, the newly appointed director, a young St. Martin professional that went away to study at a university in Holland and then come back here, get an opportunity to work at one of our government companies, and then get the opportunity to be appointed managing director of the airport. And the first thing he says in Parliament to the nation of St. Martin is, no, we're going to negotiate with the Dutch and the Americans. We don't have no local St. Martiners who can crunch the numbers. I mean, are you for real?
Who are you referring to? The
Brian Mingo.
Okay.
Mr. Brian Mingo. And I let him know in Parliament in no uncertain terms that I was not amused by it. I was really angry. Angry one way and highly disappointed the other way. Almost got tears in my eyes. It triggered something in me in terms of like, my Jesus, this is the way our own think about us? Is this how another one of us thinks about our own people? That we don't have our own people? So then why did we put you there? Why did they put you there? Because they had confidence in you. And one of the things that I've said one time when they were trying to bring in somebody, I think it was to run the harbor back then, my thing was, if we go on the internet, okay, if we go on the World Wide Web and put out an ad, let's say for an ombudsman, would we find one more qualified and more experienced? And for sure, at the time when we appointed Mrs. Nilda Ardern Lynch, when we appointed Dr. Ardern back then, she had zero experience. But today, after leaving office, she retired as an experienced, qualified, and highly successful ombudsman that can basically now go throughout the world and the region and talk about the work and the responsibility and her experiences. But she was given an opportunity to serve in that capacity. So if we would want the best that we can find anywhere, we would never, so to speak, find a St. Martiner. But I believe that we must have our St. Martin people in place, and particularly why? Because we are building a young nation. We can't build a young nation with people who have no ties to St. Martin, no history, no affinity, no interest. We got to build this nation. Not that we can't use, if we start an airline tomorrow, or if we expand Winair, yes, we may not have the pilots to fly the 747s or the 777s, but that's a difference. But the airline is ours, and we take the decisions about it. And all we would then be doing is hiring one or more pilots until we train our own. But the direction of where we are heading, it is done by us. And if you ask somebody else who went through a similar thing, it's like, hey, how you guys do it? How are you managing this? But don't tell me that a condition to help got to be tied to, we got to manage it. We got to take it over. We have to put our people there because we don't trust you. And that is the stigma that we have to fight against. That is what we have to stand up, not only as the people, but it has to also resonate in government, that we should not be pushed aside Our people should not be made to believe that they can't run the hospital, that they can't run our business. One of the things that I've always done whenever, and that goes back to my first day in office as a commissioner, I opposed every time. It has nothing to do with let's say with a Dutchman or somebody else, but I have always opposed putting the so-called technical assistants to be head of this, head of that, or head of the other. You are technical assistant. You are here to assist. You are here to advise. You are here to say, PJD2. Today I was telling somebody the beauty about 30, 40 years ago was that you only had one radio station. And today one would say, how you guys manage with one radio station on this island? But the beauty of it was, Wendell, any message anybody needed to broadcast to anybody. You could have a cousin coming from Nevis, and he's here for one night. All he got to do is get a message to PJD2, and the whole of St. Martin knows. Because you didn't have 20 radio stations to listen to, or you're going on Facebook, or you're going on Twitter, or you're going somewhere. There was only one way of communicating, and it worked then.
All right, let me just ask you a quick question as we go to a break here, because I think that what is missing is we ourselves are the ones who are not getting what we're supposed to do, and we are not making the decisions that we're supposed to make. We are undermining our own people, and as a result, we become weak, and that's why we are under pressure the way we are. We need to work together, don't we?
Well, if we continue fighting like crabs in a bucket, okay, there's a difference. If we are fighting among us, if you and I are fighting to see who will get to the front door first, or who would get the best program, if you and another DJ in here is fighting for prime time, whether it's on a Sunday or midweek, it's a fight between two of us, and one of us will win. But when there's a third party out there manipulating, and the objective of that third party is to discredit all the DJs and all the radio personalities on PJD2, make it sound like you're all incompetent. And that's where I started off just now, and I've lost my own trend. PJD2 has been here now for years, before most of the people who are here were either living here or were even born. Okay? For years. And it survived. Hurricanes licked down the building and it came back. Hurricanes knocked down the antennas and it came back. The founding fathers of it have died, but it continued. But can a group from Holland establish a more modern radio station with better broadcast equipment, with people with more knowledge and or experience? Yes, they can. So can a group probably coming from the United States, or a group coming from Germany or France. But should we discredit our own for somebody else? Should they make Lady Grace and Wendell and Elton and everybody, Master D and Joanne and all of them, appear to be a bundle of incompetent people who don't know what they're doing? They have been serving St. Martin, and they have been meeting our needs. Someone sent me an interesting message yesterday, and they said, Mr. Marlin, please ask the government to take their time with our rebuilding our airport. He says, right now, JetBlue, American Airlines, KLM, Air France, all of them are landing, all of them are coming to St. Martin. There are no jet bridges. We had. There was a time we had none, and they were coming. Then we modernized, and we put ourselves in debt to accommodate. But right now, those same flights are coming, and the flights are coming full. And for Carnival, everybody is saying the flights are booked out and all the hotels are booked out, and people who are into Airbnb are telling you, hey, we are getting, there's a high demand. My sister is coming from Florida, and her friend wants to come with her, and the flight is booked out. They're trying to get her on a different flight. And the person is telling me, so why would government try to bankrupt the country to rebuild the airport, spend hundreds of millions or spend tens of millions, and we can take our time and do it gradually, set priorities, and don't hang our hat higher than is necessary, because, hey, we are still having a great season. People are still coming to St. Martin. St. Martin is still in high demand. And so that little story about PJD2 was in essence to symbolize, to show that we have built this country. We have built PJD2. We have built other institutions. Look at that cricket tournament that we had just the other day. Would England organize a better tournament? Would the facilities in Barbados or Trinidad be way better than they were? Of course, because they have been in it longer than we have. But with the little that we had at the Caribbean Lumber Field, and with the limited people that we have, the organizers, together with all the fans, were able to pull off a very, very successful event.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was just trying to make the point that we are more hurting ourselves rather than working together to get where we're supposed to.
Yes, and it starts with government. If after the hurricane, rather than using the hurricane as an opportunity to advance your agenda to get in government, and some who, well, it was started by those who were in government, supporting the government, but having their own personal political agenda, using the hurricane to overthrow the government that they were part of. And we see what has happened. And even after the election was held, rather than going into a slim 8-man majority, if they had looked beyond the political lines and beyond the political personalities and say, yes, the interest of St. Martin is bigger than any one of us. Let's work together, pull St. Martin back to the front lines, and then 4 years from now, we do battle again if that is what it would be. But no, you want to have it all for you, and you draw it in a corner. But whenever convenient, whenever you can't get it done, then you make it appear as, hey, we got to work together. This is for the country. And then once you get what you want, it's back to square one again. This is our little thing. And that is why you see this, what people would be saying, oh, old school politics, or why they can't think that at a given moment, no quorum is given to government, because government, you chose to have 8 people. You chose to work only with 8. You don't want anything to do with these other parties, but you don't even have the decency or the courtesy to humble yourself and say, hey guys, we need 1 or 2 of you. We need you guys to support us on this. No, you walk around with a chip on your shoulder with arrogance. It's like, we're going to do it anyhow. And again, Jules James, MP Jules James is now in office. And guess what? The coalition won't have 8 for probably another 2 weeks. That is why nobody is hearing anything about the budget, because those who are supporting the government, their personal or business interest come first, and they leave. Whenever they have something to do, they would leave. They won't show up to the meeting. The meeting is, they don't care about the meeting. And so the lack of support by the 8 is what is really causing the inactivity, so to speak. We are requesting a meeting to ask government to come to Parliament and have a debate with Parliament on these conditions that supposedly have been set, because we want to know, we want to hear from them. Did you have discussions, and have they resulted in these conditions, and have you accepted the conditions? We see that there was some story in the newspaper that while negotiating, while having meetings with the bondholders and Holland and the Netherlands in New York, that some reporting was brought forward, and how the Prime Minister is initiating an investigation to punish those responsible for the leak. For me, as a member of Parliament, and I think for St. Martin people, more important has to be, is it true? Because if someone is deliberately lying and or misleading the people of St. Martin, or spreading confidential documents that are not supposed, but if someone attended a meeting and this is the direction the meeting went into, and information came out of it, because I see ministers coming and saying what they have done to get certain things solved and whatnot. But rather than coming to Parliament and saying, listen, we had discussions with the bondholders, we had discussions with the Dutch government, this is what we are looking at, even if you call Parliament in a closed door session and say, hey guys, this is what it is. But no, you're not talking to Parliament, but now you're going to the national detectives to start an investigation to punish those who have leaked information.
But isn't the leak signify that something is wrong?
The leak, this is what I'm saying. The leak says two things. And when you call the leak, if, let's say I went to the U.S. State Department to have discussions about pre-clearance. If someone on the delegation provided information about the discussions that we have had, yeah, I would not be investigating and trying to lock up somebody if they told the truth. But if, for instance, a document was exchanged and it was sealed strictly confidential and you know, secret documents because it contained information that can be damaging to the national security of whether St. Martin or whoever, one can say, hey,
then it's wrong.
Then it's wrong. But the fact that they're so upset about it means that they themselves are not comfortable with the discussions. They're embarrassed because of the outcome of it. And now, rather than dealing with the facts, our airport is in serious trouble. The government can't seemingly solve the problem, and now you're going to look to shift the attention from the real issue, which is we need to get our airport problem resolved. But now you're going to spend energy on, let us find out who leaked so we can punish the leaker and lock him or her up, and then what?
Okay, let me take a break, Mr. Marlin. I have to get my commercials in, and then we'll use the rest time to wrap up our conversation. We'll take a break and come back. Mr. Marlin is here with me, MP Marlin, and of course we have used up quite a bit of time, but I had to give him the opportunity to express himself. But Mr. Marlin, as we wrap things up, I just want to know, how do we remedy this situation? Or can we do something to change the type of relationship that would probably help us establish ourselves when there is so much internal fighting on the inside to be able to move forward?
You know, sometimes, the philosophers have said in the past, and it's always applicable, every people get the government they deserve. People were misled after the hurricane. People went under hype They gotta go, they gotta go. They keep my progress. We need money, we need money, we need help, we need help. That collusion between the Dutch and some politicians and the misinformation, because the Dutch had their agenda. We needed to get a politician out of the way that is opposing our agenda, that is standing in blocking us. And what did we see after? MP Heiliger, the leader of the UD party at the time, signed a letter that was written in Dutch for him, thanking the Dutch and basically throwing William Marlin under the bus. And they would do anything, because they wanted to work with them, and thanking the Dutch, and the Dutch was good, and the Dutch was good, and the Dutch was good. Today it's biting them all over because of, let's say, the stance that they have taken. And the only way forward now is that the politicians need to realize we went down a wrong road. We need to get back on track and work together. And B, some people are saying we can't wait until the next election, but an election will come, and it may come sooner than we think. And I don't mean that we're going to have snap elections, but the time is going to go by, because in the years that every 4 years we had to wait to change the island council,
it goes by quickly,
and it used to go by quickly, because before you know, here it is, we're already heading towards the middle of 2019, and the hurricane would be two years away. Okay, and when that time comes, that people consciously vote, because we have not been voting consciously. There was a lot of vote buying, there was a lot of misleading, there's a lot of information that used to take place. But I believe this process that we're going through is making people become more and more conscious as to what their role is. We have a delegation from Parliament going Holland to lobby and to if possible, speak in the second chamber to defend the position of countries St. Martin, Curacao, and Aruba. But on the delegation, we have at least 2 members who can't speak any Dutch. No, I'm not saying that to represent St. Martin, you got to be able to speak Dutch, but does it make any sense for someone who speaks not one word of Dutch, not even Goedemorgen, okay, to be in meetings where the language in the discussions, in the negotiations, and any possible documentation is all in Dutch? So are we really, and I'm not saying that William Marlin is saying he should have been on the trip, because we have a leader, Sylvia Jacobs, she is well versed in Dutch and in English, and she's capable of representing not only the party, representing St. Martin as well. But here we take people along for the sake of going along and enjoying the free ride. But these are the same people who would tell you, yes, I'm going to give a certain percentage of my salary to people. But the percentage of your salary that you've given, whether it's to charity or to whoever, here you are spending thousands of dollars, thousands of guilders to go on a pleasure trip to stick a feather in your cap to say, I was there. The same person went to Suriname a few weeks ago and sat for hours. And Wendell, it would be like you and I go to China and we are sitting in a conference that is in Chinese. There's no translation, and we are sitting there. It's bad enough that you got to endure it yourself, but then that the taxpayer is paying for it.
Isn't there a policy? I remember when MP Rudolph Samuel at the time was in Holland.
Yes,
and is there a policy that they agree on speaking Dutch only?
Apparently in the Dutch chamber, and I think it is. You see, when during the IPCO meetings, for instance, we would speak I spoke English enough times why I speak Dutch fluently. In the Parliament of the Netherlands Antilles, I always spoke English, even though I speak both Papiamento and Dutch. Because my thing was I'm representing the people of St. Martin. And if they're listening to me, anytime, they should be able to relate to what I have said. Now, if I'm in a discussion in Holland and I need to speak Dutch to make my point clear to the Dutchman, or if I'm on a radio program in Holland, I'm going to speak, let's say, in Dutch. But what happened to Rudolph Samuel at the time, he was faction leader of the National Alliance. I was a commissioner in 2010, and we were in Holland, and he got up to address on behalf of St. Martin. He was bringing a point forward. And when he started his presentation, the chair lady at the time said, meneer Samuel, in de Tweede Kamer is onze spreektaal Nederlands. Telling him that, hey, in the second chamber, because that is how they have regulated it for Holland, because I guess there are Moroccans who get elected, there are Turks who get elected, there are other people who get elected, but they have the Dutch nationality, and things. So it's a provision for the second chamber in Holland. Now, we have not made any provisions to negotiate with them to say, hey, if we have delegations, should we be allowed to at least then speak English as one of the languages in the kingdom? That has not happened. So these discussions take place in the second chamber in Dutch.
Okay, I have to wrap it up, Mr. Marlin. I want to thank you for coming in. At least you were able to speak to the relationship issue as it relates to where we're going and what would be the best way to remedy the situation. I still think it's going to be us working together. And I want to thank you for coming in.
I want to thank you for the opportunity, for sure, on sort of short notice, yesterday to today, for accommodating me. And I want to thank all of those who have been sending me messages, even now during the program as well. I want to tell the people it's a journey that we all should embark upon. I'm not calling for us to become enemies with the Dutch people, but I'm saying we need to be vigilant, and there's a fight that we need to fight for our rights as a country within the kingdom. And that fight has to be against the Dutch policies and the Dutch politicians.
All right.